Welcome in to the Bro 4 Squad podcast, where we are just a bunch of bros drinking beer and talking movies. I am your host, the mayor, Jeff Hornacek. This is our spoilers review of Scream 6. I am joined by our legal counsel, Ronnie Cycli, to review this movie as we do all of our movie reviews using the 5 Bro 4 Squad criteria: the acting, the story, our favorite scene, the impact of the film, and then at the very end, rewatchability, or basically our recommendation to the fan, should you go see it. So, Cycli, before we dive into acting, I always think it's important with these horror franchises, we do this with the M. Night movies, we do this with Saw movies, to let our fans know where we are coming from as far as our thoughts on the Scream franchise. So you personally, even before you went in to see this movie, what were your thoughts on this franchise as a whole, just so we know the context between you going to see it?
I think hands down, this is by far the best horror movie franchise of all time. I mean, consistently from 1 to 6. I really genuinely feel that there hasn't been a bad movie. Not saying some have been better than others, but there just isn't genuinely a bad movie in this genre, in this franchise. And to the point where when I was going to see it, I was like, you know what? Even if this one sucks, they've more than earned my trust. And so, you know, I was really excited about it.
Yeah, I don't think it's even up for debate now. This is the best top to bottom horror franchise.
And if
there
you
might
want
be
to
some other
debate it, you're
franchise.
just doing it to have fun, because there's not a
Sure.
serious, nothing comes close to this.
Yeah. So there might be there are other franchises that have better movies in them, like probably the first Halloween, or even maybe the David Gordon Green Halloween, or like the first 2 or 3 Saw movies. But like you said, Scream has never missed, and even its worst film is still above average. And you can debate which one that is, but again, I don't think, and part of it's because they took that big gap, I think, and were able to sort of revisit new tropes in the horror genre. But it feels like it just has a shot in the arm and new life with these new entries, and I'm excited about it. So leading into that, the acting and the cast. Interesting thing about this one, they obviously use the meta element of steering into the legacy requel. So the new they talk a lot about how the new characters we've met in Jenna Ortega and Melissa Barrera's characters, Sam and Tara, are now, you know, they're carrying the franchise on their own, but the legacy characters are here and they're expendable. And as always, Scream shines a mirror on itself. And so you can't really predict what it's doing because it's telling you the game plan that you would assume it's going to have. So acting and cast here, Cycli, who stood out positive or negative? It was mainly the returning cast, but then we did get some newcomers as well.
Yeah, first I want to compliment Melissa Barrera, because I like Scream 5. First of all, I say is a top 3 Scream movie, and I don't think this one came as close to being as good as that one, at least my personal opinion. But she was a weakness, I felt like, in Scream 5. I just felt like she was just kind of, you know, not the best actress, but I thought she would delivered so much more this time around. So I was actually impressed. I was kind of like, okay, she's the main girl. I don't want to have to see her struggle on these scenes, but I don't know if she took some classes in between seeing like this, you know, filming this, but she got impressively better in my opinion. You know, everyone else didn't like, you know, everyone else was great. Jenna Ortega, of course, having a moment these last few years. You know, she was fantastic, but I think you and I talked about too, the Scream movies, they kind of again make fun of themselves. They kind of be meta, so they get away with a little bit of like the non-serious acting back and forth. So I personally thought, you know, I thought the performances were great.
Yeah, I think the Sam and Tara relationship, like the sisters and Sam like squeezing on too hard to Tara, not letting her go out of fear of, you know, something horrible happening to her. I'm trying to think if there's been a core relationship in any of the Scream movies that has been that poignant and well done. Because typically it's like either a romantic relationship that ends up, you know, fading away because one of them is the killer, or because one of them dies. I don't know if has there been like a familiar, really any relationship in the Scream franchise that's been that well put together?
The closest has been Gail and Sid, right? Like, I mean, because Sid was always in it alone, right? She didn't have any other siblings. Her mom was dead. Her dad really wasn't involved anymore. And, you know, I just think that was basically, I mean, they weren't really siblings. They obviously came to a head and fought a lot, kind of like the sisters are here. But I think that's, you know, we didn't really get anything else. And I will say, you know, we got Hayden Panettiere back in this one. I don't know. She was okay. She's kind of, I mean, she seemed hot there for a minute, like 10 years ago, right? Am I crazy? Like, wasn't she
No,
seemed
when
to be
she was
like,
in Yeah, when she was in Scream 4, and then that show Nashville came out a few years later, and I think she did like a pretty popular rom-com, like I
yeah,
Love You, Beth Cooper. She had a nice little
she's
half-decade run.
dropped off a lot, and I felt like I did so. Those were the positive performances. I did feel like she and Dermot Mulroney was a little weaker, especially at the end. I mean, we're saying spoilers, right? Um,
Yes.
yeah, I just thought they were, everyone else was great. Like, I think it was fine. I think Hayden, I don't know if she's just been out of the game too long, and Dermot, like, I think maybe a bit of an overacted there at the end. So yeah, I would love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, that was the one weak performance for me was Dermot Mulroney. Even throughout the film, like when Quinn quote unquote dies and all that, I realize in hindsight now, like he was trying to play up his emotions, but at the time you're like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? And
Yeah.
he like is maybe the most decorated actor in
Oh,
this group outside of
100%.
Courtney Cox. So I expect a little more from him. But I thought the twins were great again, Mason Gooding and Jasmine Savoy Brown. I think, like you said, they both
Yep.
improved a lot. And Jenna Ortega, I mean, is there anyone hotter in Hollywood right now
Her and
than
Pedro
her?
Pascal probably.
Yeah, for real. Let's put them in something together. All right, you ready?
I
Move
got
on
an
to the
idea.
story.
Pedro has to save her and take her around. Like, that's the only thing
That
he
would
does
never
now.
work. I just walk around with people younger than me.
He
All
has
right,
like he
the
has all three
story
of these
for
like a Pokemon
6
collection. Sorry.
is Ash Ketchum. All right, IMDb says for the plot synopsis, in the next installment, the survivors of the Ghostface killings leave Woodsboro behind and start a fresh chapter in New York City. All right, so the thing with Scream that makes it so interesting to me, at least, is it's always reinventing itself. And I think the thing that had a lot of people really excited about this entry of it was that they were, for the first time, taking the action to a city. We've had it on a movie set. We've obviously had it in Woodsboro several times. I'm trying to think. Scream. I guess we've had it on a college campus, but this one we were in the Big Apple, New York City, and the trailer promised to deliver some interesting scenarios with Ghostface in that. So, what did you think, Cycle? I guess number one about the new locale that they set a Scream movie in, and then two, how the narrative kind of weaved. Because my favorite thing about this was the way that it utilized all of the previous movies, not just as a gimmick, but it was a core component of the story, like the previous entries.
Yeah, the New York bit was I mean, just the opening of it, right? I mean, you can go into it. You lived in New York. Your wife is from New York. I always love the concept of there's just so many people there that someone can literally be screaming or someone could be getting stabbed, and most people will be oblivious to it because it could be
Yeah, it's
for
almost
any
like you're
variety of
alone
reasons.
It's almost like you're alone in a crowded room, really.
Yeah, exactly. It's completely isolating feeling, even though you, like you said, you're surrounded by so many people. So I did love that element where a killer can get away with certain things in a situation like a place like New York versus a place like Woodsboro, on the grander scale. And the story at the end of the day here is it makes me think of um, the Force Awakens, right? That was basically a retcon of New Hope. This was essentially Scream 2, right? Like, this is what I enjoy about the Scream franchise, and they call themselves out for doing it too.
Hmm.
They're in New York, but they're in college, and one of the killings happened when they were in college, and back in Scream 2, and we had there was some honor in an homage in the original killings, and obviously this one plays this up much more than Scream 2, with the leaving of the masks at each crime scene. But again, Scream gets away with it more than anyone. If I was watching another franchise, I'd be like, oh my gosh, they're just doing the same thing. They're
Right.
literally just copying themselves. The thing is, Scream is literally telling us they're doing it. Like, they dedicate a scene in each one saying, no, this is exactly what we're doing. So you can never hold it
It's
against
like
them. So yeah.
they're like self-deprecating, but also like very self-aware, and they sort of hold up the sign that says this is what we're doing, so that you can't even predict it because you're like, well, if they do the obvious, they called it out, and if they subvert expectations, that's because I was looking for the obvious.
Yeah, you can't be. That's why that's the thing that's been genius about the series. You cannot be mad at them. You can't. I mean, they are literally again telling you what they're doing. So if you're annoyed, that's on you. You don't. You're the one making the choice to go see it. So, the story was again like yeah, I've said this before. I think on the last Scream review, I've never been about yes, it is a whodunit, but to me, the story is never. I'm not as excited about who the killer is, who Ghostface is, than I am about the cool creative things that Scream does every time. So I thought it was fun to be in a new place. It will be interesting to see what they do with Scream 7, which I know has been greenlit. But yeah, I like that the fact that they were in New York. It was a needed twist.
Yeah, to me, this one felt very fresh, but also like very much. I mean, of course, it's very much a part of the lore before it, and um, the interesting element of like the killer leaving masks in order of the previous film's ghost faces to me was just fucking genius. And I've revisited most of the Scream movies, I think within the past year and a half, maybe 2 years. I know we just did a movie commentary on Scream 2. But even if you haven't, they catch you up quick enough just so you know what is significant about it. And it's not like required viewing to get a lot out of the movie, but if you have seen them, you get more out of it for sure. Like they hold your hand through it, and the important part of all of it, I feel like, is ultimately that you've seen the previous Scream movie. But again, its ability to no other film franchise, like you said, can do this. Its ability to guide the viewer through the tropes of the horror franchise by telling you what they are, and then also utilize them effectively right after they tell you what they're. It'd be like an offense in football being like, we're going to run option right, and so the defense is like, well, there's no way they're actually going to run option right,
Yeah.
and then they run option right, and it fucking works because you weren't expecting them to do what they just told you they were going to do.
And then next time they tell you option right again, you're like, okay, well, this time they're fucking with me. And then they do it again.
Exactly. It's just, I don't know.
I don't know what to do.
As writers, like, you have to just have so much fun with this. I saw an interview on the red carpet. Matt Bellini opened, and who's the other director? Oh, Tyler Gillette were on the red carpet, and they said, do you have an idea for Scream 7? And they go, dude, we have ideas for Scream 7, 8, 9. Like, we just want to, I hope this does well enough where we get the chance to do them. So they're huge fans of the franchise. And I think as long as these movies exist, like, there'll be something interesting that they can do just because they don't have to be a straight up horror movie. They can play with the ideas of horror. But
yeah,
I always say this, I am worried if we get too many of them too quickly, because we sort of need the genre to evolve for them to have enough fodder to create a new entry.
I'm hoping what they do here is they finish, the story of the Carpenters here, maybe in a trilogy, and kind of reassess, like reintroduce it in Next Generation a few years. I mean, Scream again gets away with it, unlike other franchises. But at the same time, you know what? Even if they did shell these out once a year for the next couple of years, I still say we've been through horrible Halloween movies. We've been through horrible Saw movies. I mean, go down the list of horror franchises. I'm like, really, Scream could give us 5 bad movies, and until they're like caught up to these other franchises. So
very true.
Yeah,
they're playing with house money at this point. Like,
yes, very much.
All right, moving on to best scene. I told you what mine was off pod. I'm not changing it. What was your favorite scene in Scream 6?
Yeah, I'll let you. I mean, that's probably one of my top scenes too. I absolutely love that. So I'll let you talk about that in depth. I did really like the opening, because the opening is always sets the tone in the Scream movies. Honestly, like, I almost look forward to the opening more than
I agree.
The Ghostface reveal, because, like I said, I'm not there for the Ghostface reveal, as fun as it is. I really like the opening. Again, I wouldn't say it was the best Scream opening, but I loved the concept. And you told me about, like, well, the killer has a reveal. I mean, 5 minutes, I was like, oh my God, like, the Ghostface just pulled his mask off. And I was like elbowing my wife. I was like, oh my God, like,
that would have been
insane. I was like, we're going to get a completely different, like, Scream. We're going to see it from the killer's perspective. Like, I thought that was going to be a big twist on this whole New York thing. And then, of course, 5 minutes later, the real Ghostface, is punishing the kids for mimicking them and disrespecting what Ghostface is. So I did like that. It did keep you on the edge of your seat for a little bit. Had you guessing, because typically we get the phone call and the person's killed and that's it. And then an honorable mention, I will say, to the subway scene, because I've been on those crazy subways before in New York and Chicago and in Europe, and you do genuinely feel like someone could get stabbed, and people wouldn't notice. It would take too long for people to notice that something bad had happened. And I don't think that's like a silly movie trope. I genuinely felt that fear in that scene there.
Same. Everyone's just like so in their own world that they're not even paying attention to other things happening to them. All right, I have 2. One I think you really enjoyed as well, but I'll say that one second. My first one, just because it was so unique, so tension filled, and my theater was like on pins and needles. And that was the scene where the Carpenter, I think it was both Carpenter sisters, I think, right? That had to crawl across the ladder to get into Danny's apartment while Ghostface was in there killing all them. And then obviously, like, you're assuming they're not all gonna make it. And as let me look up the name of the actress, as Annika was the last one to go, who once she got stabbed, I was like, I don't think she's gonna have the ability to get across this. But
I don't think Danny's
Ghostface,
gonna make it either way, whether she crossed it or not. She had been just slaughtered.
right? One of his more unique kills, right? Shaking her off of the ladder and having her fall to her death.
Yeah, he was.
That was really. He was. It was really interesting, really tension filled. Practically, it kind of made sense. Like, I think that would actually work in real life, and also I don't think they had many alternatives to get out of the apartment. So that was one in the trailer when they showed like a little clip of it. I was like, this is going to be fucking cool. I can't wait to see how they set this up. Another one I had, and this is just probably a top 3 scene for me in every single Scream movie, and it is when Mindy, they're in the like courtyard of the college campus, and she's doing what every Scream movie does so effectively and so uniquely, and she's explaining the rules that the slasher genre has laid out, that the killer will inherently be following for the legacy recall. And I just thought that scene, it's one of the coolest things because no other franchise does it, and this one seemingly always does it really well. And every time they do the scene, I'm like, that's pretty accurate. He pretty much summed up movie fandom perfectly. And knowing that their
people like
characters
us get personally attacked.
You're talking about me with the letterbox line, right?
Well, yeah, Reddit or all these kind of videos and things like that we do and participate podcasts. You're just like, oh yeah, we are that.
Yep, you're not wrong. You are definitely not wrong. And the fact I do kind of love how her and her twin brother are the Martins are nephews of Jamie Kennedy's character, because that was always his role in the Scream movies, and now they have inherited it, and it makes perfect sense to me. So, all right, on to the impact of the movie. So this is basically anything that was left out of the previous 3 parts of the review, or really just your thoughts or feelings on how this leaves both the Scream franchise, the horror genre, or even what's coming up next for like a potential sequel or spin-off or something for this movie. So, Cycly, take it anywhere you want. Impact of Scream 6.
Yeah, I don't think the impact is heavy based on this movie alone. I think the impact came from Scream 5 and then kind of the reboot of the whole meta-ness of the last 2 movies about their franchise now, right? Like, this movie isn't a standalone movie. It's playing off its predecessors and it's adding into its successors. I mean, I don't see how Scream is slowing down. I think I checked on Saturday or Sunday, and this movie had like a opening weekend, and it was already at like 50 million plus, right? Like,
jeez,
people are seeing these films. Scream hasn't slowed down just because it's adding more films to its name. There's a lot of movies that, as you add more sequels, less and less people go. And I think because it's delivering something that hasn't slowed down in its product, I think it's going to sustain itself for a little bit until it literally loses viewers' trust. And I mean, I don't think they're close to doing that. So I don't think the impact is anything but it's good enough to keep this franchise going, right? Like, it's not a series killer. It's not a franchise killer. It's a franchise, it's advantageous to the franchise. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's crazy that we're still sitting here a year later from when we watched Scream 5 being like, that was so good. I hope they don't ruin it, saying, no, they're still doing it. They're just fine. They're not slowing down.
Yeah, Scream 5, I think, had the advantage of it being so long since the previous iteration. Like, there was so much they could play with in terms of, the way that they structure these stories as to things that have changed in the horror genre. This movie had a tough task because do audiences still have an appetite for this 1 year later? And can you follow up a really successful movie with not a stinker? And they did both of those things successfully. So not only do people have an appetite for these still, but I think it's growing. And I don't know what contractually they locked Jenna Ortega into before the first Scream, but they struck lightning in a bottle because, like we said, she's not only insanely talented, but she's one of, if not the hottest actors in Hollywood right now. So getting to have her still included in this franchise and be leading it was great foresight. I'm sure a little bit of luck involved as well. but it certainly helps things. And so for me, I guess the impact of it is just like you said, Scream is not only maintaining its success and building on Scream 5, but audiences are still have an appetite. Like typically slasher movies in this day and age, I feel like don't get either wide releases or they just don't do that well, even with very modest budgets. Something about Scream still strikes a chord with people, and people are still interested to go out and see it in numbers that they don't go out and see other slasher movies. Because aside from even ones that are like, what was even, maybe I'm missing an obvious one. Like, there's a lot of horror movies released, but I feel like if you make a slasher movie now, it's almost straight to streaming, right?
Yeah, because it can be so gimmicky, right? Like it's really hard to pull off good slashers. I mean, there's a reason why we don't have 8 Strangers movies. Like because they pulled it off, it's hard to replicate. They're trying, but yeah, you're completely dead on.
Yeah, the returns just typically aren't there at the box office. So Scream there is the outlier, and of course, if we get another one, I do kind of want them to take their time. I mean, if they come up with another one next year, that'd be really fucking cool. But that is a quick turnaround to do 3 movies in 3 years. But you and I will be there, first 2 weekends to go see it for sure.
Oh yeah.
All right, last one is rewatchability, or basically like, would you recommend this to people, or is this something you're already ready to go see the second it drops on streaming somewhere? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. It was actually so fun. My wife and I went to dinner after seeing the movie. We were meeting another couple, and we got there a little early because the movie got out, and so we just hit the bar at the restaurant, and we started talking about Scream. And the bartender started hearing us talk, and was like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, how was it?" Like without giving anything away. And he obviously loved this franchise too, and we were just talking about like, dude, this is a Scream movie, right? Like if you like the Scream movies, you're going to like this one. Like at the very least, you're going to say, oh, it wasn't the best one. That's the worst that's going to come out of this.
I know.
So it's and so like, yeah, he was like super excited. Like I was like, yeah, dude, go see it. Like it might not be like, I was like, I think I rate it 4 or 5 out of 6. But you got to go see it. And again, if you've liked the franchise, why are you stopping now, right? Like if you've watched all 5, again, because the movies haven't done anything to us as the viewer to like make us not want to see it. So I would be
Right.
confused if you didn't want to see it, if you have been a fan. So I 100% recommend it and 100% rewatch it. I really think I'm at the point where I need to start like rewatching the franchise every year as like in order before the next one comes out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, especially because like canonically, not only does the franchise adhere to the previous movies, but it uses that, like it basically weaponizes it in its plot. It's genius about that, to where they don't have to come up with a completely new idea. They can play off of the previous films in a lot of creative ways. And like you said, rewatchability for me, if you like Scream movies, then this is right down your alley, right? Like they're at this point in the relationship between the movie and the audience, they know each other so well. It's like when you've been in a couple for so long, it's like, I know where you want to go for your birthday to eat. Like I know what kind of gifts you like. And the viewer and the Scream franchise, we know each other at this point. Like they know what we like, they know where we like our back scratched, and we know, what their favorite type of cheesecake is. So if you like Scream, you're going to love this movie. I think it's going to be a lot of fun for you. Again, different people, I think, place different amounts of weight on the reveal in the Scream movies. For me, I don't know if it was you who said this or somewhere that I read it online, but the ride in this one is so much fun that even if the reveal at the end, which I don't think the reveal's bad by any means, but if it's a little underwhelming to me, I had so much fun getting there, as I typically do with a Scream movie, that it's still an above average slasher.
The 2 hours always flies by with Scream. Like there's just so much going on. They don't leave any scene wanting.
Mm-hmm.
It's not filled with just suspense. It's filled with they hit everything. They hit the comedy, they hit the drama, they hit the horror. Like I mean, it's just there's no reason to not go see this movie if you like the franchise.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you are still waiting to go see it, again, you don't have to rewatch any of the previous ones, but I definitely think you get, especially with this entry in Scream, you will get more out of it if you go revisit the prior films. So if you've listened to this whole review, though, we've already spoiled it for you, so I hope you fucking see the movie. All right, Cycly, any last thoughts before we let the people go?
Yes, it's just my one thing that I thought would have been cool to see this movie. So my little prediction I had was that Jenna Ortega, like you said, is getting hot, right? Like she's everywhere now. And I was like, there's no way they're gonna keep her coming back. And they kind of hinted at the beginning she was getting annoyed at her sister, and like always in her business. And I was like, what if Jenna Ortega was the Ghostface in this one? And I thought that would have been because then they kill her off, and right, like she goes on and does better things than Scream. I was like, that would have been that would have been the one thing I thought would have made this movie really stand out in the franchise. But they don't need to do stuff like that to just win us over. What they did was great, and I'm excited for the next one.
Yeah, so that reminds me of one idea. So I told you, like, before I went to go see it, that I had a really, really meta idea that, Neve Campbell, this is the first Scream movie that she's not been in as Sidney Prescott. And they do actually, like, reference her several times. Like, they don't try and avoid it. And I do think it was sort of a one-off. Like, she just said that what they offered her, she didn't think was enough money based on what she's done for the franchise to come back for this one. I definitely think the door is open for her to return. But I actually think narratively, it almost would have been harder to fit her in. Like, she would have had to proactively come to New York to like pursue Ghostface. So it kind of just made sense that she wasn't in this one. Right. I
agree.
Like, what would her? So I think it worked for this one. I don't know if that was like. I'm sure they would have found a nice organic way to put her into the movie if they could have reached an agreement. But I think this franchise, it also is sort of important, I think, for the new characters that it sort of learns to stand on its own two legs, even though I know the legacy characters are still going to be a big part of it. But this was very much Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega's movie, and it needed to be, I think.
Yeah, and we'll probably get at least one more of that, in my opinion. We'll give them a trilogy.
I think so. Yep. All right, for our legal counsel, Ronnie Cycli, I'm the mayor, Jeff Hornacek. We are the Bro4 Squad podcast. Thank you guys for checking us out. Follow us on Twitter at Bro4 Squad. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, pretty much anywhere you find your audio podcast. If you type in Bro4 Squad as 3 separate words. Check out everything we have ever posted on our website, bro4squad.com. Till then, Cycli and I need to discuss, what is your favorite scary movie? Scream 6, probably, right?
Yeah. The newest Scream every time.
I'm a sucker for trends.